So as a reminder, welcome to the Spring Roundtable for Civil Affairs Association. And just as a reminder, we are going to be recording today. So if you could please make sure you're speaking, those of you that are on the panel, if you get videos on, that'd be amazing. And if you could speak slowly and clearly for the transcriptions for our notes for after the fact, that would be fantastic. So with that, sir, I'm going to pass it to you for opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Colonel Pogge. Really appreciate your effort and that of your committees. For those that are not aware, Carolyn is the Civil Affairs Association Vice President for Programs and Events. And this is sort of an inaugural event for her, the first where she's really taken over from our previous lead on this, Colonel Chris Holshak. So again, significant thanks to you and the whole team for getting this together. This is one of our really premier events for the Civil Affairs Association in our service to our association members, as well as the wider Civil Affairs Corps, in the attempt to bring both current events and academic rigor to the business of civil affairs. So it's a great pleasure to have the opportunity throughout today with our panels to really explore what's happening in the world of civil affairs, and in particular in the world of the U.S. Army Civil Affairs and Psychological Operations Command. And we are delighted to have the commander, Major General Andre Carter, with us today as well. The panels today are focusing on their specific areas of responsibility, what they are doing, how civil affairs across services, both conventional and special operations forces, civil affairs, and also touching with partner nations, and how all of these are working to integrate civil affairs operations into the global command and area commands, and to share best practices throughout that area of responsibility. So we think this will be useful. We're timing it across the day to be able to respond to our international locations that will be working to have these discussions brought to life today. And so with that, let me turn back to Carolyn. And again, thank you to everyone who has made this possible. And to each of you that are joining in today, we hope you'll find this quite interesting. You are able to come and go as you please. We will ask that you're careful with your speakers in case you are stepping away, to remember just to mute before you do that. All right, well, so with that, Carolyn, back over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we're going to actually get a little bit of an early start. Colonel Rundgren, I believe, is your whole panel here already?
Yes, it does appear.
All right, then yeah, we'll just get a little bit of an early start and add a little buffer in for our transitions. But if you'd like to start, so Colonel Rundgren is representing 352, and they're going to be focusing on CENTCOM this morning.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Carolyn and retired General Van Roosen. So 352 is unique. We do have both CENTCOM and AFRICOM, and the preponderance of our panel today is actually covering our AFRICOM teammates in AOR. Again, Shane Rundgren, currently serving as the DCO for 352. I'm joined here on location by Lieutenant Colonel Roy Graham. He's serving as the CHOPS here at the KCOM. Again, a broad overview, regionally aligned with both AFRICOM and CENTCOM. The CG directed that each of the brigades take a force generation responsibility towards each of the AORs, focused at the service component level, utilizing CENTCOM as an example. Or those forces are generated to support not only RCENT, NAVCENT, CJTF, OIR as well. It's both for generated coming out of both AORs. 352 has limited JEP ODT activities, or roughly 3 annually for not not exceeding more than 40 packs in total. So our focus really has been in that fourth generation aligned against FTNs, and with that, I would turn to our distinguished gentleman collaborating with us today from Vicenza. I have a distinct pleasure to introduce a pair of outstanding civil affairs officers, Devin Conley and Dan Curran. Devin is a Compa 1 permanent party to CTAF-AF and is the Civil Affairs Branch Chief. Dan Curran is currently serving as the battalion headquarters battalion commander that's attached to CTAF-AF. And with them, we'll open up our panel and discuss some of the civil affairs activities and integration within the AFRICOM AOR. I'll pause there for a minute for them to welcome themselves and add any additional welcoming comments before we go into panel discussions. Devin Conley.
Sir, you got me.
Excellent. Thank you
Excellent.
so much.
Yeah, sir. So apologies, don't have a camera here enabled in my office, but happy to join the group here as we discuss, how we've utilized civil affairs forces across the African continent. Just so very quickly, I think because we generally get confused questions sometimes about what CTAF is and what CTAF isn't. So Southern European Task Force Africa, UCRAF is the Army Service Component Command for Africa, but CTAF really is the action arm for Army activities across the continent. So I think for the day-to-day purposes, you can see CTAF really as, I won't say the ASCC because we're not, but essentially that is the case of what we do. So myself in my position, primarily the Civil Military Operations Advisor for our CG here at CTAF, but also the #1 proponent for civil affairs activities across the continent. I've been here for almost 3 years now. So I've seen it from, still kind of coming out of a COVID funk where number of activities on continent were greatly reduced, both active duty and Compo 3, to where we've grown, I think, significantly to use our civil affairs forces in a large variety of ways for exercises, operational authorities, security cooperation. And I think, at least up to this point, have been a really good use case of how you can use civil affairs forces. I'll pause there, and then, sir, I guess we turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel Dan Curran to introduce himself as well.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Very excited for the opportunity to be here today. So I've been on ground for 2 months now as a battalion commander. Really, it's very similar to any other battalion command. This really is kind of where rubber meets the road in the execution of the missions, trying to ensure that we are guiding all the teams in the right direction. Definitely a unique environment in the sense that, traditionally when we employ civil affairs, we think about a team or a company being aligned with a brigade headquarters and then operating within that finite area of operation given to the brigade. This is unique in that a company is then aligned with East or West Africa. So you have teams separated by thousands and thousands of miles, and they're maintaining oversight of vastly different missions with different requirements, both coming out of the U.S. Embassy and out of the partner nation. And then at the battalion level, trying to organize that greater lift and ensuring that we are maintaining relevance and providing a quality product up to CTAF. Formerly commander of the 450th Civil Affairs Airborne, and I think that has been immensely beneficial in coming into this position to really be able to guide the mission as clearly as possible and not kind of learning the ropes as a commander from the get-go. And that said, sir, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Dan. You already have covered my first question, which was some of the overlay. It's great to see you again, both of you. Though, Devin, I know your camera's not functioning this morning, but it's good to hear from you. The overlay, did you want to expand upon the overlay just a little bit more with you covered the east and the west, the distance. I know we have teams that float in and out, but your integration, I was looking more into the integration at the to the CTAF, your battalion headquarters, and the plans and the plans team with the battalion headquarters, working and collaborating with Devin Conley and his team.
Sure, I'll go ahead and start on that, and then pass it over to Devin. So it's a little difficult in how we work through this, mainly because of how do you properly position yourself to ensure that you have the best command and control of units, as well as integrating with the CTAF AF staff. For those of you that aren't aware, due to events that occurred in Niger within the last few years, we used to have the West Africa Company based out of that location. Now, both East and West Africa Company, as well as the battalion headquarters, are at Camp Lemonnier, Djibouti. So as we look at just the disposition of forces, the number of episodic teams, I've positioned myself at Djibouti so that I can maintain that command and control. But when we look at the integration and planning, because of the multitude of episodic missions that could be going on, we may be at a given time in 13 different countries. So it's incredibly important that we have a TAC set up at Vicenza, Italy, which is then integrated with the staff there. There's a number of key elements that we have to ensure that we're working with, and the folks that I primarily position up there come out of my future operations cell and out of the CKI cell. And through them, we're again very much integrated with 3.9, going to integrate with 357 plans, and then incredibly specific to this mission, as it is different than the traditional civil affairs mission, where we're doing primarily theater security cooperation. We are integrated with TSC and the skid desk at CTAF. And that really helps give us a full oversight and understanding the direction that CTAF is moving in, so that we can be prepared that once we get into close to the execution date, we are fully integrated and ready to transition plans from FUOPS to CUOPS with as little friction as possible. Colonel Conley, I'll pass over to you.
Yeah, I think you hit the structure of, how it looks with integration from battalion to, to CTAF, focusing on FUOPS here. But I do kind of, highlight the challenges that we have, the challenges I think that we're not ever really going to completely fix, that when you have, we'll say, 4 levels of civil affairs elements, from the team, the company, the battalion, up to CTAF, I think it makes it very complicated, or very difficult for us to plan and synchronize our efforts from one level to the other. Especially because I fully admit, in the nature that we use our civil affairs teams here, we put a lot of responsibility on team leaders. It is a lot. So that becomes difficult when we put a lot of responsibility on those of us that have the least amount of experience, right? So it's a constant push and pull of, from lower echelons wanting more and more guidance, and from a higher echelon, sitting up here, needing more and more information from our teams and companies to help drive that guidance. So yeah, I think it's been an interesting problem set we've been working at. I'm always looking for ways for us to improve. Certainly willing to accept any feedback from those and other COCOMs that have seen similar issues and how they've overcome them.
Wonderful, gentlemen. Something I noted in there too, right? Devin, you just highlighted the immense amount of responsibility and implementation that the team leaders must apply. While Dan was describing that their episodic engagements into these various countries, so that's it's a twofold conflict of C2 in there, in which as in the past, we've been able to have a somewhat persistent presence to work the problem sets and implement programs or projects. It's a much more episodic, and then we have to come back in and reanalyze where we are and maintain these relationships from a distance. Is that what kind of strain and mitigation measures are we able to utilize to continue to facilitate CAO? Over.
Yeah, so our use of teams episodically, meaning we'll send a team into a country from anywhere from, we'll say, 2 to 8 weeks, I think is a useful tool for us, or useful ability to us, because it allows us to react quickly to requests that we get from partners, requests we get from, tasks we get from our CG, to respond quickly with a variety of authorities that we have to do so. However, that also brings its challenges. I would say some of the value, or a lot of the value that civil affairs brings, is our ability to build relationships. So if you're persistently engaged in some country, like in Ghana or Cote d'Ivoire, we have teams 9 months at a time for deployment. Those relationships are very key for us. And in those places, the struggle is just passing off relationships through a rip, a 2-week rip from one team to the next. That becomes more challenging during episodic engagement. And it's not so challenging if we can have one team, like the same team from the same deployment, go back multiple times. But if episodic becomes so infrequent that it's once a year or maybe twice a year, we need to look at the value of that activity in and of itself, and not rely upon, or not think that we're going to be able to sustain relationships ourselves. So for us, a lot of those relationships are maintained through the Office of Security Cooperation in the embassy, the defense attaché in the embassy, other elements that do have more consistent or persistent presence in the area.
I think some of the things that we do just to try to ensure that in these episodic missions, we are keeping the teams fully engaged, especially if they only have the opportunity to go in 2 times per year in that country, is that we are aligning the civil affairs teams with 1, 2, sometimes 3 countries that they're interacting with. So we may have a team that is aligned with both Zambia and Botswana. And what we do in the interim to ensure that they can understand the problem set as much as possible, it really has to be an integrated approach. And as best as we can, we try to start this during the pre-deployment phase. And that really, I think, is the key to maintaining continuity, is that if they can be assigned to a partnered or the deployed CAT team, and then they can mirror what the duties are as early as possible and gain that understanding, and then start to identify, what are the products that they need to understand early on in order to minimize the learning curve when they get there. So, integrating with the OSC, knowing the embassy's country plan, knowing the national defense strategy, understanding the AFRICOM campaign plan. So having this base knowledge that they can begin with, so that when they get into the country and start working with the partner forces, they understand what the strategic level approach is of what they're trying to achieve. And that really helps develop and maintain that guidance. The other area is a full understanding of the different funding cases between 321, 333, 164. And that's been another area. Historically, I think there has been more struggles because it's not something that's organically taught within civil affairs. Within the 360th, 360 Civil Affairs Brigade, we developed an academics team to get after this issue and integrate into the pre-deployment training classes, so that the teams can better understand what those requirements are within each one of those case types. But really, the guidance and understanding and coordination with CTAF really comes down to that base knowledge level of how missions and the systems work across CTAF. So utilizing that pre-deployment phase, and specifically with the episodic teams, ensuring that we can guide them in how to spend their time and research more when they're not fully engaged is what helps to keep the mission running as smoothly as possible.
Yes, continuous engagement, whether physical presence or intellectually re-stimulating and understanding more of the AOR and systems and processes and tools that are available. That's fantastic. Dan, I do greatly appreciate you touching on some of those programs, 333, 3321. As opposed to projects that CJTF HOA a decade ago was, if you would, a stagnant. It was a very designated AOR and kind of as stagnant against that operations order. And with that, we saw a lot of medical in caps, med caps, in caps, FHA generated projects. And while you might utilize some of those through some ODACA maneuvering, it's really against those program codes now is how we're generating our relationships and advancing joint objectives between AFRICOM, U.S. interests, and our partner nation. I do want to pause here. We do have a couple of questions that have come into chat, and we'll like to go ahead and try to address these.
I can see them, sir. You may hit those up.
Okay.
Yeah, so the first question, is talking about the main customers that we have for civil affairs. Specifically, there are multiple customers for CA efforts in the AOR. Which entity is the main customers and the partners that you leverage? Yeah, so absolutely right. Like multiple partners or multiple customers that we would see. I mean, sure, CTAF we could say is the main customer, and ultimately, we're going after CTAF and AFRICOM objectives. But I think I would kind of branch it into two, maybe. I think really we work through our military partners primarily on continent. So I'd say in a lot of countries, our partner militaries, the Ghanaians, the Ivorians, I would articulate is the customer, because at the end of the day, as Colonel Curran hit, for a lot of our activities, they are security cooperation, and we are trying to make our partners better at this, so we don't have to be there any longer. In an ideal situation in northern Ghana, the Ghanaians would be doing all CivMil activities, and maybe we observe, but we've trained the Ghanaians to do that, so we don't have to. So I would articulate our partners, our military partners, as a customer. And then also the embassies themselves are a customer. And so just like we depend upon our OSCs and our defense attachés sometimes to maintain relationships, a lot of times we are building relationships for them. Just from embassies I've been in Africa and elsewhere, our DoD brethren in those embassies sometimes don't have the ability or the time to move around the country to build relationships. I'd say specifically here in Africa, the U.S. government has no persistent presence at all in Guinea-Bissau. So our teams going to Guinea-Bissau, even for 2 to 4 weeks, really helps the embassy build relationships in that country that otherwise they just could not do. And then the second question relates to train up, and then is there teams integration with G5 for briefings and other things as we lead up. So I don't think specifically G5, but myself and others in the G39 do participate in validation exercises. 352 and 360 have done a great job of creating a training pipeline. And then during a ValEx, I've been out once, but I've sent, I think for all of 2024, we were sending personnel to the ValExes. So great time to get with teams and companies in person and have those kind of conversations about what do we expect from them, what can they expect from us, talking about higher level strategy plans, etc.
Yes, yes, not the G5, but your team in the Civil Affairs branch has been immensely helpful. Also helped facilitate, and a name absolutely eludes me at the moment, but AFRICOM's system of record for recording OAIs, and being able to emulate that system in the pre-mission exercises has been helpful as well. there was one additional, well, there's a couple more chats that have come in. I wanted to back up to the very first one, which is kind of interesting, and we can touch on it for a moment. But Devin, you and I have had a discussion on while AFRICOM has a system of record, and all the GCCs are directed towards systems of records to capture essentially OAIs. Well, the repository for SIM and CKI, and therefore measuring our operational effects within the CAO operations is still a nascent area, and one in which we're looking for that joint solution where or maybe not a joint solution, that's perhaps incorrect, a solution in which that we're able to utilize, be able to see and grow that CA running estimate, and assist in that academics portion before we enter into AOR as well. And perhaps we've also discussed where that would work with our ability to utilize CA forces as reachback and apply 38 Gulf equities into solution sets that the teams are uncovering with our partner nations. I'll pause there for your thoughts on the two items, which was the operational effects and how we're managing our SIM CKI information.
Yes, sir. So, I mean, as far as operational effects, I mean, it is certainly one that has continually frustrated me, and I think this headquarters in general, I wouldn't be surprised if others say similar things. I think measuring our effects, especially the type of things that civil affairs are doing, beyond just an anecdotal level, is exceedingly difficult. And then, it should not be surprising that, I mean, sometimes frequently our effects take a long time to develop. So that becomes challenging as, AFRICOM national level guidance frequently changes and causes us to shift our activities. So measuring an operational level effect over time, even with the tools to do so, is difficult. So we do have tools to do that, not civil affairs tools. Through our SIOP and IO partners, there are, at least in the AFRICOM AOR, I imagine across the other COCOMs there are as well, tools for surveys and other things that you can actually solicit information from populations. So as long as you've created surveys in the right way to measure what you're actually trying to measure, there are ways to look at. For instance, in northern Ghana, what is the population's perception of the Ghanaian Armed Forces? How is the civ-mil relationship in northern Ghana? Now, I think I would also caution it's difficult to tie any sort of positive or negative trends specifically to us. I would say we are just a supporting effort to something like that. So I caution anyone that looks at survey data to say if they're doing the right or wrong thing, but I think it is a measure to do it. As far as CKI and a place where we can store data is always one. I mean, I've seen a lot of different programs used over the years. I think at this point, what we were really looking at is how do we use Microsoft, like things like Microsoft SharePoint, or tools that can be like a Microsoft team where it can be shared wildly, controlled internally, because I honestly think for most of the information that we generate, the most information that we generate in our civil affairs battalion generates, CTAF and that civil affairs battalion are also the customer. And really, Colonel Kern and his folks are the primary customer for the data that they are generating. It's future teams, future companies that are generally going to need that. So as long as they are maintaining, and I think the biggest difficulty there is that just maintaining continuity of data collation and how we're storing information. And then just something that we always need to think about is then when data is needed or wanted by entities outside CTAF, is it shareable, or is it in a place where people can easily access it? Just knowing I was the CKI chief for the 95th Civil Affairs Brigade when the war in Ukraine kicked off, And I received calls from all over the place about getting the 92nd Civil Affairs Battalion's data about Ukraine. But when it's all kept on a portal page, and even I can't access the portal page, things become difficult. So I think that's what we just look at. I think that the magical software tool that is going to solve all of these problems, I mean, I've been waiting for, I don't know, whatever now, I guess 12 years or so I've been in civil affairs. It's not here yet. I don't expect it to ever arrive. So I think we just need to look at how to best use the tools that we have available. Hope that answers the question.
I can add in a little bit to this. So I think Colonel Conley spoke to some of this earlier when we're looking at operational effects. One of the difficulties that comes in to truly understanding that is the somewhat backwards approach that we have, in the sense that very often the SMEs are going to be the teams themselves. So typically, you would look at a situation where ideally guidance comes down from higher echelons on exactly what needs to be accomplished. Here, it's very often the teams who are integrating with the OSC, integrating with the partner force, identifying what the needs are, and then are from there putting forward what the best product or what we can do to meet the needs of the end user customer. So because of that, it's difficult for, as the plan is being developed from the get-go, for CTAF or the battalion to then come back and say, okay, well, these are the operational parameters, these are the measures of effectiveness, the ways that we are going to see how well the mission is doing. Adding to that, the next layer of this difficulty with TSC missions, theater security cooperation missions, and using 321 funding and 333 funding. So when we're using 321 funding, essentially what that comes down to is that we are training ourselves. So I have a 4-person civil affairs team in Cote d'Ivoire who is conducting civil affairs training for themselves, but the Ivorians just happen to be co-located. And it's planned that way, and that is the intent. They are there with us, but the preponderance of benefit of that training has to go to US forces. So when you're looking at that, how are you going to measure the operational effect of what the partner force gets out of that training that is meant for ourselves? So when we're running into that situation, often it's just, what are the number of people that we have participating with us? What is the desire of the partner force to continue this training? Is there a desire, and are they speaking to the OSC on increasing the level of training and progressing from a 321 to a 333 mission? So those are kind of the way that we can measure the success of what we're doing. When we can get to an actual 333 mission where we have the authority to conduct the training for that partner force, that usually is going to come written into the funding plan, specific means and measures of how the course is going. What are those operational effects? So that's one comment. The other one, and I think you're trying to get to this, sir, is just speaking to when we're looking at a way to retain the body of knowledge of CKI. Traditionally, CTAF has used the system C2IE, and that is where the OAIs have been uploaded. We are currently in the process of trying to align with USRF, and they primarily are using Maven. So there are, again, just like Colonel Conley said, multiple different systems that are out there. Those are the 2 large repositories that are in use for a lot of the data. But at the same time, much of what we need really is what's shared with the follow-on units who are deploying, and keeping a repository so that they can go back, see what's already been done, not try to reinvent the wheel, and again, have that link analysis available to know who do they need to go out and talk to. And a lot of that is currently built into the knowledge management that we have on Teams, on SharePoint, etc.
That's fantastic. Yes, it's not a one shoe fits for us. We had to utilize the tools that are available, but most importantly is not creating a gap, an artificial gap between teams where we will lose our effectiveness, and no need to try to ramp up. He let the follow-on teams hit with as much speed, operational speed as possible. I'm gonna pause for just a moment. I was enthralled with y'all's dialogue, and we did receive a few more chats. Let's see what we have here. Embassy can what I have observed, and whether it was correct or incorrect in the past, it can be up for historians. But with GWAT, it was more of getting U.S. forces there, and then to start engaging with populaces and institutions, and now what we've evolved to or towards is working much more with partner forces, as both of you gentlemen were describing. So we're more in an SVAB, JSET type of series of events where we're generating interest with our partner nations, military forces, and then they're intellectually queuing them up for, well, how do I integrate with my CivMil relationship partners in their own governance space, to then what we would perhaps ideally think is then our partners picking up governance that is responsive towards their own populaces and solving their own problem sets. We'll pause again and scroll down through. And there's gaps in civil information. Yes, go ahead.
Sir, a couple things I hit on. I've seen some questions about USAID. I saw the questions about ODACA, and I think I have a lot of those same questions, right? So I personally expect ODACA to be reduced, but to what extent, I don't know. And I think by COCOM, that'll actually be different as well. You know, my expectation really for the use of humanitarian assistance is that you're just going to have to, our justifications going forward have to be much stronger. Vague references to access and influence, or just talking about humanitarian need, are not going to be sufficient going forward for a lot of our ODACA programs. I think we don't rely upon ODACA as CTAF as much as some of our OSC partners do, so it'll impact us less, but there will be a reduction. I mean, as far as changes at state, or the removal of USAID from continent, I think that, I mean, I have a lot of guesses on how that's going to go. I mean, with USAID gone, their programming gone, I think that really hurts civil affairs. You know, I might say that we do access and influence for a lot of other people, but USAID really, I mean, one, they provided a lot of introductions and relationships that we could rely upon in the humanitarian sector and the development sector that were extremely beneficial to us. They had a huge presence in the security and stability sector in Africa. Programs that I would say we would work adjacent to and supplement in areas. So losing that programming, those relationships really hurts us. And like it was specifically addressed, and we at CTAF, who have a crisis response responsibility to Africa, we don't really know what that means in a crisis without USAID. For anyone who has taken the Jayhawk course in years past, you know, they would primarily tell you USAID does disaster response, and the DoD will help out with C-17s or whatever else we need. You know, civil affairs is not going to replace USAID DART teams or something. But what does it mean in crisis response of understanding the humanitarian sector, the partners that are already operating in those areas? I don't know. I think that remains to be seen. That's a question that CTAF has been asking of, you know, are we going to start using our civil affairs battalion at least a lot more be prepared to tasks or on order tasks for crisis response that otherwise we would never have done.
Right. Anything it's a lot of interesting questions out there with our own interagency adjustments to our own interagency and focus on their prioritizations. And with that, we'll do a comms check with Joe Coolman. Joe?
Hey, Shane, can you hear me?
Loud and clear. It's always good to hear from Joe Coolman. I think this is an excellent segue opportunity to move from AFRICOM to 352's other primary customer of and utilizer of 352's forces, and that is CENTCOM. And for those that do not know Joe Coolman, he works as the Civil Affairs Division Chief at CENTCOM, and some of those same questions about crisis action. There's just a few crises in the CENTCOM AOR that pop up occasionally, and how civil affairs forces and interagency is integrated together. Recently, we had an example of the integration. I'll pause there. It's a little bit of intro to transition over to you and discussing how, from a GCC perspective, how is it to harness and integrate civil affairs, OAIs, and all your service components and aligned activities, and try to harvest that information and guide through technical chains those operations. Morning, Joe.
Hey, thanks, Shane. Hey, I'm gonna start with the last topic for AFRICOM to kind of weigh in on that a little bit for USAID and ODACA. So for USAID, it's all still to be determined. So there could be some elements remaining. There could not be some elements remaining. Where it's definitely reduced in who is active workers right now for USAID. Most of the developmental side of USAID has seemed to pause. The BHA side, formerly AFTA, but Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance, is still, they still have a few, not as much as they have. We've lost our kind of humanitarian coordinators, or they call them HAMs, that were located at the CENTCOM, either headquarters or components, and we had one at NAVCENT, but those positions have gone away. So right now we have 4 USA BHA people that are spread between DC, and I think someone's living out in the Pacific Northwest that we're in regular communication. But some of the functions are still remaining. One of the most important for us right now is the humanitarian notification system for Yemen and Syria, which provides us information on not only humanitarian community, their static locations, but also dynamic movements. So every day we'll get at least one. I've seen them go up to 5 or 6 dynamic movements for the humanitarian community that are moving within the battle space, which is good for us to know, especially in a place like Yemen where everyone can see the news, where we're doing some targeting from the U.S. forces right now. And then ODACA. So for ODACA, we're tracking right now that information was sent out for not only ODACA, but also security cooperation funding that was pushed back up to the Undersecretary of Policy, and then he has a recommendation going to the SecDef. To my knowledge, we haven't received back from the SecDef on what's approved or not approved for ODACA funding. It's definitely getting more a closer look, stringent look at where we're spending money and why we're spending money. So I would caution everyone to focus on using that program to achieve DoD objectives. I would stay away from any terminology that suggests climate change or women, peace, and security, and stay away from those programs, and then focus ODACA usage on how it's going to assist the DoD to achieve its objective. Okay, getting to the point that you asked, currently we have civil affairs in 10 locations in theater. from Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, in KSA, but focused on Yemen, Bahrain, Kuwait, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. And that's a mix of reserve forces and civil affairs forces. Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan's mainly steady state. Obviously, what's going on in Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, Jordan, Iraq, those are more dynamic based off the current situation of what's going on. State Department definitely has the lead for whatever is going to happen next with Syria, but this is definitely a positive move for U.S. government national interest of the Assad regime going away. But it's still to be determined on what's next for Syria and what the U.S. government's relationship is going to be with whatever that new emerging, because it's going to be new, whatever the new emerging government's going to be. And then, we're continuing to monitor the situation between Israel and Lebanon with the, I'd say, fragile peace agreement between them, and then the still negotiations, talks, our desire to go to talks with Israel and Hamas, which is really stalled right now because Hamas stopped releasing hostages. And so we're watching that. It hasn't gone full blown to a conflict, but Israel's definitely increasing pressure on Hamas to get them back to the negotiation table and start releasing hostages. And then we have what's going on with Yemen and Yemen's role as an Iranian proxy, causing a lot of disruption going through the BAM, leading to the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, which affects global economics right now. So we're continuing to pressure on Yemen and the Houthis to allow that freedom of navigation. And then I don't know if you guys saw, but POTUS has a meeting coming up with Iranian officials, not exactly who, but that's going to be, I'm sure, a conversation of getting Iran to stop supporting the proxies in the area, or getting the proxies to stop the conflict. And who knows? I mean, you could speculate what's going to be in that conversation. Could it be a conversation getting Hamas, pressure on Hamas to start releasing hostages again? Could it be a conversation to stop supporting the Houthis and pressure the Houthis to allow freedom of navigation? Could it be on Hezbollah and stop efforts to reconstitute and maintain political presence, but not reconstitute the militant wing of Hezbollah? So it could be anything in those areas. And then I'll pause there for any questions, and then also goes to see if Tom Howard or any of the others were able to dial in to talk about the JCB, which I think is the point that you want to talk about for Gaza. If not, I'm prepared to talk about that as well. And any questions? I'm sorry I can't see the chat because I'm on my phone sitting in my truck to do this.
And look and see. I offhand, I don't see if Tom Howard or any of our RSN brothers made it on. I'll wait to see if they can come up. But the JCB in conversation versus a CMOC conversation, I think, is one that is relevant to this forum. And there is one chat in that we can go ahead and address. Do you have any CA counterparts you're in touch with the IDF?
Yeah, I do not have any CA counterparts for the IDF. I often get questions from the J3 with the J3's counterparts concerning humanitarian actions. But I mean, you have to go way back to immediately after October 7th to kind of understand the IDF's position on humanitarian assistance, where they were resistant in the beginning because they were wanting to execute a siege and starve campaign for Gaza, and under pressure from the U.S. administration and really the European partners and everything, it was opened up to where they started providing HA. But that's one of the levers that Israel has to force a change in Hamas, is either restricting or allowing the HA. While Hamas was giving up hostages, HA was flowing in at record numbers, higher than anything that had been driven in since the start of October 7th. And then once they stopped giving up hostages, then it was kind of restricted that flow again, trying to force Hamas back to release the hostages and back to the negotiating table. I'll pause there and see if that answers the question of whether I have a partner, which I don't, but I still have communication with HA Matters or Civil Affairs Matters, CMO Matters for Israel. Over.
Seen another chat come in specific to the IDF and partners, but it did lead to, pointedly doctrinal questions about, okay, why wasn't there a hack established? Well, okay, this is a political answer to what, from our doctrinal perspective, as to why a hack wasn't utilized. A CMOC wasn't utilized. Well, we didn't necessarily have a doctrinal solution for a CMOC in place. What was available resource, civil affairs resource, was assigned to RCENT, and was a 352 FTN for a KCOM level CAPT, who then moved into that JCB space, Joint Coordination Board. And again, I don't see that we have any of our brethren from RCENT having popped up yet. Did you want to discuss any more the construct of the JCB?
Yeah, Shane, I can. And the JCB was the last organization. So you have to, go back to the beginning to understand the full transition to eventually get to the JCB. But that wasn't the original name of the organization nor function of that organization. Some of the people remained the same, but the function and the responsibilities of that organization changed over time. To answer some of the questions, there was a hack formed in Cyprus when we were doing the JLOTs, and that was to coordinate the humanitarian assistance coming in from USAID and partners to organize and then load onto the ships to transition over to the JLOTs, and then to transition off the JLOTs to the holding area, and then where it was picked up by World Food Program and other UN partners, and then distributed throughout Gaza. So a hack was formed. A CMOC was not formed, but that doesn't mean some of the functions of a CMOC weren't executed. And so what I've found in my time is we're really tied to this CMOC term, but it doesn't translate well. The term doesn't translate well with humanitarian actors and partners because of the Civil Military Operations Center meaning everyone understands what a TOC is. And so they think it's directing operations, when in actuality, a CMOC by function is a coordination cell, and it coordinates humanitarian efforts, because we can't tell the humanitarian community what to do with their goods and supplies because they all have different mandates. And so, in my opinion, the term CMOC when it comes to these crises like this is not the appropriate term to use because it's going to translate poorly, whereas a coordination cell translates a little bit better. And even with humanitarian, a hack, humanitarian assistance coordination cell, it's coordinating the HA. It's not really directing where it goes. We're not telling people to bring stuff in. All of that's voluntary, but it is trying to organize the chaos when it comes in, but without a talk-like aspect of it. And so I wouldn't get upset that things weren't called a CMOC just because it doesn't translate well. And so JCB, Joint Coordination Board, again, coordination, and that's coordination between the IDF and the humanitarian community. Sorry. And the real role for civil affairs during that was the use of relationships with the IDF to facilitate the communication between the humanitarian community of what was coming in and where they were going, what routes the IDF wanted them to take, the areas that they wanted to focus on. Some of that was based off of IDF military objectives. Some of it was based off of the security situation at the time. And so it was trying to limit risk to the humanitarian community based on what was currently going on the ground. And then also being able to coordinate with the various checkpoints that the trucks would have to drive through to make sure that they made it to the location that they needed to make it to. And then also adding the notifying the IDF that when the trucks were coming in, so additional security could be provided to prevent pilfering from the trucks as much as possible. Didn't prevent it all, prevented some of it, but didn't prevent it all. So there was a lot of stuff pilfered as it was come in, people jumping on trucks or people seizing trucks. And we all can assume who those people were that were stealing stuff as it was coming in. So probably Hamas would be my guess. And I can jump into that more. I'll pause right now.
No, I think you've teased out the important piece with regards to civil affairs activities, how we present ourselves, how we train ourselves so that we have the flexibility to adapt to the situations on any of our from a force provider perspective. In general, Cornegay emphasizes this with the development of forces to fulfill the FTNs, is the ability to understand the situation, recognize the situation, and then apply the correct mitigating maneuvers to that situation. And when I say maneuvers, whether that be the terminology that we use, understanding the term, what actually underlines or underpins that term. And that, in this case, we were talking about coordination. So coordination and that interagency coordination was the important piece in having the skills and having previously validated in pre-mobilization training that the personnel that were going forward had those skills to be adaptable and understand their role of in civil affairs to facilitate the civil interaction. Is the more important piece. I'll pause for a moment. We've had some chat dialogue here. Let me see what we have. We have one note that came in. It's important to remember, doctrinally, who's supposed to establish or who can establish, say, a hack. Excellent opportunity for formal joint lessons learned, both classified and unclassified. Yes, and some of that information has gone forward. There was a question that came in before I get to this question on regarding drones, in depart from the Gaza situation, there are two items that you have addressed: BAM and Gaza, and of course we set up for Gaza humanitarian relief through via the JLOTs outside the AOR. So we see an extension of coordination and facilitation for activities inside the AOR that's occurring outside or against those seams of the GCCs. And I know that you and the team there in the Civil Affairs Division account for those. And do you have any additional information for us on how you're able to account for it and or coordinate with your fellow TCAPs at the other GCCs? Over.
Yeah, so sticking with the Gaza JLOTS theme, the effort in Cyprus, the major lift was executed actually by UCOM elements, and so they coordinated that aspect of it. There were CENTCOM elements there, but the major lift was executed by UCOM with coordination and then handing off to CENTCOM elements transitioning through. And then once conditions were set on the ground with RCENT, I guess forward, I don't know what they were calling their headquarters, but in Israel, then those elements kind of transitioned to support that effort for RCENT there. But the heavy lift of receiving and then transloading onto the ships was all pretty much executed by UCOM elements with a few CENTCOM elements there to be the transition piece for moving over to the JLOTs. Does that answer that question, Shane?
Yes, very much so, Joe. We had one question, and I don't really have knowledge of our implementation of drones within CAO. I'll leave that open for both AFRICOM and CENTCOM teammates to address if we've integrated. We do not have drones as a standard tool with an RMTO in the reserve component, and therefore none of our pre-mission training incorporates drones. So organically, no drones, and therefore moving to assets other than CA having drones and integrating information that's derived from those drones. I see initially that's mostly would align against area reconnaissance and understanding the physical space just over the horizon. But I'll pause and present that one to both you, Joe, and then back to Devin and the team, and then I think we'll be preparing to wrap up 352 and partners, the CENTCOM and AFRICOM's panel presentation.
Hey, Shane, real quick. So AFRICOM may be able to speak to this more because we actually did some research during the Gaza stuff, and apparently there's an NGO in Africa that was using drones to heavy lift medical supplies to locations that were remote or that you would have to drive through like a dangerous area to get to be able to bring key medical supplies. We actually put together a CONOP here at CENTCOM to try to get medical supplies, mainly like bandages, stuff that was lightweight, and use drones to be able to deliver to the location that was needed. Because if you remember, prior to JLOTS, they were trying to bring in the HA through the southern portion of Gaza, and it was never making it to the north. So there are hospitals and clinics that weren't receiving life-saving medical supplies and food and stuff Now, we don't think the drones could have lifted a lot of food, but probably a lot of bandages to like control bleeding and stuff like that, maybe some IVs. We put the CONOP up. It didn't make it very far, but we have it in the kit bag if it ever comes back up. As far as civil affairs, what we're tracking from the 96 is it's mainly what you said. Civil reconnaissance is mainly what it's mainly used for, flying over areas to kind of get a lay of what's going on and stuff, and it's mainly used for that purposes. But in Gaza, I think it would have been neat. I forgot what name we called it, but it was kind of like looking at Amazon, and then really when we did some open source research, we found out that there's actually an NGO in Africa that was already using them. Now his were, I think the ones he's using are actually plane drones, take off and land plane drones, where we were looking to use a quadcopter that I think had 65 pounds of lift. It had 65 pounds of lift for a quadcopter. Commercial off the shelf is what we were wanting to purchase, and then put it on a ship out in the Med. Again, prior to JLOTS, put it on a ship out in the Med, load it up with the supplies, and then fly it in, and then fly it back out to the ship to recover. So it's interesting you bring up drones. Again, our CONOP didn't go anywhere. I wish it would have. I'll turn it over to AFRICOM for whatever they have to say.
Sure, and
my
yeah, nothing
knowledge-
really to add. Yeah.
Go ahead, Devin. Yeah, they were going to say the same thing.
Yeah, the AFRICOM's no real use of drones for for our purposes. Definitely the 95th has looked at their use for civil reconnaissance, not something we've done here. I think not surprisingly, a lot of the countries we work with also, like you'd see in the United States, have a lot of restrictions on those types of things. So in some places we work, it's actually quite difficult to use them even if you wanted to. I'd be interested to see the use case for humanitarian assistance in Africa. I was not tracking that one. But I definitely think it's an interesting field, especially with the movement of light amounts, or probably as years go by, heavier and heavier loads. I'm sure we'll have drones that can carry more than just 65 pounds, because that would be an interesting way, especially places like Africa where the distance can be far or short, but difficult terrain to navigate.
Hey, I can find it easily. Just I think you're on an email with me and Shane. I don't know if this is Dan or Devin that just asked that question, but just shoot me a message and I'll send over the articles that we found for that NGO.
Thanks, sir.
So first and foremost, gentlemen, very, very appreciative of your time today to join the Civil Affairs Association's panel in representing the CAO activities in your respective AORs and the perspectives that you bring to this forum. I believe one of the items that we've identified that is highlighted across as a theme within is technology, and technology continues to evolve, whether it's where we're putting our ones and zeros or utilizing technology to achieve an effect. That is a space that we'll continue to monitor and have cognizance of. And the other item I believe y'all also highlighted is just the the depth and strength of foundational understanding of what CAO is, and then to being able to adapt as the situations present themselves and apply then those techniques to achieve commanders' objectives. And with that, myself and Lieutenant Colonel Graham will conclude our facilitation of this panel piece and turn it back over to you, Carolyn.
Thank you so much, Shane. Thanks for all the panelists from the AFRICOM and CENTCOM perspective. With that, we're going to take a pause now. It's about 10:10, and we'll pick back up at 10:15 to get back in, and we'll start with the 353 and a focus on UCOM. So I believe Colonel Vaha is going to be facilitating that group, and so we've got about a 5-minute coffee break. So if anybody needs a bio break, you got an opportunity. So we'll be back in a few minutes.